Hi all, going to talk you through my process for converting miniatures. This is one of the Kickstarter rewards. Before I get into the actual conversion though, I want to talk about the tools I use, things to have on hand. So when making miniature, it's good to have a couple of tools. The first are clippers. The second thing you're going to want to have is a good quality craft knife with a good sharp blade on it. The next thing that I make a lot of use of are files. Now I've got an emery board and a file. A lot of the plastics that minis are made of are soft enough to actually file with an emery board, but I've also got a harder file for when and something that's a bit more abrasive. Other tools then, so green stuff. Sorry for the rustling of the bag. Keep mine in a little baggie. Green stuff, for those that don't know, it's a two-part epoxy. You mix it together and then it dries hard. It's a chemical reaction that causes it to dry really hard like plastic. It can be really used for filling gaps, something that you'll come across a lot when doing conversions. You often create gaps in minis. So having some sort of putty. Some people prefer Miller Putt, which is another type of two-part putty. I prefer green stuff. It's a bit more tacky. It's a little sometimes harder to work with, but I find the results preferable for myself. Then we've got our glues. So we have a plastic glue for when we're working with plastics. Plastic glue won't really work on anything that isn't plastic, hence the name. So if you're going to be converting with resin parts, if you're going to be converting with metal, you're going to need super glue, which is the other glue then that we have to hand. So getting on to converting a mini. As part of Forbidden Psalms, the game that I've created off the back of Mockborg, I'm not going to pronounce that right. I'm afraid my Swedish pronunciations aren't fantastic. I've created a random generator for helping you roll to create a random mini. I'm actually going to use that generator now. I've got some dice and some very pretty dice that I managed to buy online somewhere. I can't even remember where. And with these dice, what we're going to do is we're going to essentially roll for each of our things. Now, before I get into the rolling and deciding the mini, I just want to talk about how I organize really. I have these little trays that go in a metal cabinet, and what I do is when I get miniatures, if I have spare parts, I separate them. So this is a little box of heads, this is a little box of arms and weapons, and this is a little random box filled with all sorts of wonderful bits and pieces that are really useful for conversion. I also have a bigger random box for larger things, spare miniatures that I might use. Some of you who have backed the Kickstarter will see this miniature, for example, used as the base for quite a lot of the conversions, as well as all sorts of random things, failed 3D prints that might be used for something. I basically never throw a thing away. Find that keeping random bits from board games and all sorts, like epic little minis that was printed at some point for somebody else, means that by keeping all these random parts, I can make sure that I've always got a good supply of pieces for kit bashing. People call it their bit box. I have bit boxes. So the first thing we're going to do is we're going to roll a d8 to determine what our guy's head's going to be like. We get a 1. That means he's going to be wearing a helm or some sort of makeshift helm. So I've got a series of heads here in this little box that I can sort through and find something that is suitable. Or, because it's a makeshift helm, I could even take something like this, which is a Skaven shield from the Skaven kits, and I could convert that into a mask. Also, coming into this, I've got lots of sprues. Why sprues? Well, I sometimes keep parts in sprues, particularly if I'm still working, particularly if there's a lot of parts, particularly if they're very small parts, because putting them into the bit boxes can actually make it harder to find them. We need a good head with a makeshift helm. Let's roll to see the eyes now. We get a 6. Nothing. He doesn't have any glasses or eye patch or anything, so that's cool. And now we're going to roll to see what his face is like. Does he have a beard? Does he have stubble? A 3. A 3 is a clean-shaven individual. So now what we're going to do is we're going to have a root through our heads box here, and we're going to try and find a head that matches that. So spare you watching that. I will cut here and come back once I've found one that is clean-shaven with a helm. So let's crack on. Okay, so I have found this little head here. I don't know if you can see that very well on the camera. Hopefully you can. It's my first time doing this, so apologies if things are blurry. I will get better, I promise. This is off a Frostgrave sprue. Now you can see that there's still a bit of sprue material on the base, so we do need to grab our emery board and just file that down, make it nice and smooth. Okay, there we go. There it is, nice and smooth. That'll be a nice connection for when we connect it to the body. We now need to decide, what is he wearing? Is he going to be wearing rags? Is he going to be wearing heavy armor, bones, robes? So we're going to roll a d8 for that. So we roll our d8 and we get a 3. A 3 is scrabby looking clothing. We've got a couple of options when we get the scraggy looking clothing. So if we go back to our sprue box here and try and find a body that matches that. So we have some kind of scraggy looking clothing. I don't know if you see that on that one, on that body there. So I think that's going to be the body we're going to use. Again, this is from a Frostgrave sprue, so this miniature's already got 2 Frostgrave parts. I try to use things from different kits, so when we get to the arms and weapons and things, I might mix it up a little bit. What we do now is we take our sprue and we clip it off. And then what we're also going to do is we're going to check the model to see if there are any mold lines, which are little lines where the model gets cast. So we've got a little one there, and what we just do is we just scrape them off with a knife like this until they're gone. You can also file them down, but being careful not to remove any detail. So that body is there. We've got our little head. Now, I'm not going to glue the head yet because I want to see what weapon he's going to be using. I want to see what kind of character he is before I decide to where I'm going to glue the head. Because gluing the head and the position of the pose. So at the moment, I'm just going to find the parts. This is how I like to approach things. And now I'm going to roll a d20 to see what weapon he gets. And he gets a 3, a lot of 3s so far. He gets a short sword. So I need a nice short sword. So this is the Wizard sprue from Frostgrave. I really like this sprue. It's one of the best sprues ever come across for conversion parts. You've got all sorts of weird and wonderful pieces on this sprue, from different arm options, from different kind of scrolls and books, things like rats and tiny, I don't know how well that makes out on the camera, little skulls and all sorts of other weird and wonderful things. Now, there is a sword arm here with a short sword that I really like the look of. Now, like I said, we've used quite a few Frostgrave pieces, so at the moment it's not much of a conversion, but what we're going to do is we're going to spice him up a little bit later. We've got our arm. Let's see if he's carrying anything in his other arm. So the next thing we're going to roll for is whether he has a light source. So we're going to roll for that. We've got a 4. He has nothing, so his other hand doesn't have a light source. The book says toss a coin to see if he has a shield, if he has a potion, backpack, that kind of thing. Instead of tossing a coin, because I don't have a coin here with me, I'm going to roll a d4. On a 1 or 2, he will have a shield, so we'll roll. We got a 2. So a 2 means he will have a shield. So we're going to find him a nice, interesting shield in a moment. And does he have a backpack? He also has a backpack, so this guy needs a backpack and a shield. So we're going to need to find some interesting things there. We're not going to pick him as a spellcaster because I think with a shield he can't be a spellcaster, so we'll leave him as not a spellcaster. And then the final option is to find something interesting about him, make him unique. We're going to roll a d20. We get a 1. And a 1 on the table is a cult symbol. So we need to give him some sort of weird cult symbol. We can either paint a cult symbol on the model, or we could find something that could represent it, maybe something that goes on his shield. So what we're going to need to find for this guy, a backpack and a shield. So we can find an arm that would carry a shield, we can find a unique looking shield, find something that is even a makeshift shield potentially. So I'm going to look through my bits box now and see what I can come up with. For his shield, I have found these Oathmark Elven shields that I really like the look of. They're quite an interesting shape, lots of different designs to them, and we're actually going to use one of these. Now, this is a nice plain surface of a shield, which might seem a bit boring, but actually it's going to be great for trying to put a cult symbol on. We now need an arm. Now luckily we're going to take an arm from the same kit. Now this does mean he'll have mismatched arms, but that's okay because his clothes are meant to look quite ragged, quite makeshift, so it kind of actually fits with the model that we rolled and the narrative that we have for this guy. This is a guy who has cobbled his gear together from gear he has found. Maybe he doesn't even worship the cult symbol that is on his shield, but it's a shield that he found. So it makes for an interesting model, and it also then kind of feeds into my thinking about how I'm going to paint this model. Because when I get to thinking about the paint job for him, if he is ragged and he has found his gear is likely to be rusty and chipped, and that's actually one of the things that I'm going to think about with this sword, whether I want to put some little divots in it, or whether I actually want to even use my ground texture to try and put some on the sword to create like very, very abrasive looking rust. We also need a backpack. Again, we're going to look at the wonderful Frostgrave sprues. I'm using a lot of these parts, but they're just so good for this kind of conversion. And then we need to now look for something that will resemble some sort of weird cult symbol. So give me a second while I look for those. I've decided in my kind of searching for parts that this guy, or the shield at least, has come from a cult of a spider god. You can see I've got this quite large piece here. This is actually from a Nurgle kit. But I've had this piece kicking around for ages. I always thought I would stick it on, but I think it's too identifiable as a Nurgle piece as it is to actually use as a whole piece. So I'm going to chop this up. I'm actually going to just cut that spider head that you can see there out. I'm going to be very careful. I'm going to use my clippers. I'm going to go in and I'm going to chip out the bits of plastic I don't want. You can see that I've cut this piece out here, but it's not finished. I've got a lot of material still to go. Hobby saw. Yes, I didn't mention this in the tools, I should have, apologies. Hobby saws are fantastic tools. They give you really clean cuts without really distorting or losing detail. They're not that expensive, they're about £10 on Amazon. I think I picked this one up, but you can see it's pretty blunt at this point and it's pretty used because I've used it a lot, but it's incredibly useful. So for cutting this spider face off, it's going to be really, really useful because I can go in very gently, begin to saw that piece. When we're through, I've ended up with a nice flat back. Can you see that back there? Yeah, nice and flat. So that's going to stick to the shield very, very well. However, there's still a lot of tidying up to do, and I still kind of want this a bit flatter. And the best way to do that is to file it down. Okay, so after a little bit of filing and clean up, I have a nice spider face to put on my shield. All the parts here assembled, ready for what I'm going to use for this model. All of our parts are going to be glued with plastic glue. What we're going to do is we're going to start by gluing this guy together. Now, I'm going to glue his head on last, pretty much, because the direction that he is going to be looking will depend on so many other factors. So the first thing I want to glue on is that sword arm with it raised up in the air, because the positioning of this sword is going to be the most important in terms of his pose. So you can see that he is, at the moment, got that arm right up in the air. I'm not a massive fan of how that arm looks, and this is part of the conversion process. Is often you will get a piece out, you'll go to glue it on, you'll glue it, or you'll dry fit it, and you'll realise that you're not a big fan of how it sits. So I'm actually going to remove that arm. I'm actually going to use this sword from a Mantic skeleton kit, because it's already rusty and chipped, and it'll be perfect for the kind of feel I'm going for this guy. What that means is I need a different arm, one that has an open hand, in order that I can fit this sword into it. These ones are kind of grasping, so I actually think these might be the perfect hands. Let's try this arm out. And that's the thing, when kit bashing, it's not a simple thing of finding all the right parts, putting them aside, and building a model. It's not like following a set of instructions. So what you're actually going to do is a lot more freeform. And this is why you'll see I have tools around, I have glue with lids off, because as I'm going, I just kind of want to be in the moment, just seeing where the inspiration takes me in terms of what I use on a given model. I'm going to try this arm. I'm kind of much preferring that as a pose. So that arm's glued on. This glue does take a little while to dry, so before I go and stick anything else onto that side of the model, I'm actually going to go to the other side and attach the other arm. So we're going to put him down for now and let those arms dry for a moment. And while we're doing that, we can get working on the shield. So we'll take the two parts of the shield. Hopefully you can see that. What we're going to do is put a little dab of glue in the middle of the shield, and we're going to put a little spider face. This was a weird spider god shield. With that there like so, we can put the shield. You can see he's got this little tab on his feet. Now a lot of the Frostgrave and other minis come with these tabs. It can actually be really awkward when basing. Now I'm not actually going to remove it because I'm going to cover it with basing material to make it less obvious. Sometimes I will take a hobby saw and saw them off, but for this one I'm not going to. It will add a bit of height. These bases are quite thin that I've been using lately. So by putting him on that, it does add a bit of height to the mini, which is useful, hence not removing it. It's a little bit shiny, this glue, when it dries, so don't worry about that. It will be covered up when we paint him. Looking towards where he's going to be pointing his rusty sword. There we go. So here is our ragged cult member. Now we do still need to add a backpack to him, which is nice and simple. So we take the backpack and we're just going to glue it on. Use a lot of Frostgrave pieces, some other weird pieces like on his shield. You can see we've taken that Nurgle kind of icon and put it on the shield to create a symbol to a spider god. We've given him a shield from a different kit, arms from different kits, and a sword from a different kit as well. Now, the last thing I'm going to do is talk about this chain, because I do want to incorporate the chain in some way, because I do enjoy draping chain over minis. Now, those kind of openings on the shield are a perfect place for me to place a piece of chain and drape it around. You can see. And then what we're going to do is we're going to just chip off the excess chain using these trusty snippers. So that chain clipped to length, hopefully you can see that. We're actually going to go along and we're going to apply a little bit of glue to each of the chain links to seal them in. If you don't, they will continue to move and actually can cause problems. When you've painted it, the paint can chip off. And there is our finished mini for conversion for today. Down on his base, we're going to use the same plastic cement we've used before. Going to put a nice drop down like that. Don't need too much, this stuff is pretty strong. Let that glue dry, and then we're going to be able to apply our basing. I really like slate as an option. Now this was slate I actually bought from World War Gaming. You can find slate, you don't need to buy parts of it. I was just being particularly lazy. I like slate a lot because it really, really takes paint incredibly well and it looks really natural. So it's a really, really good material for using for basing. When this is dried, what I'm going to do is I'm going to go around with basing paste and I'm going to put a thick layer that's going to cover up that tab and also blend that rock into the base. Is I've taken the model and I've given him a prime in black and then a very, very heavy white dry brush, just so you can see the details on the finished guy. Obviously not painted or anything, but just so you can kind of see where he's going in terms of his this kit bash. Really easy kit bash. Like I mostly used Frostgrave pieces, as you saw, some Mantic pieces, Oathmark, some Games Workshop pieces, a chain that comes from some hobby chain, this stuff, but mostly using the North Star Miniatures range. Yeah, so that's it really. That's how I kit bash. I agreed to do as part of the Kickstarter tutorial on how I approach these things. I tend to just put my hands in the bit boxes and see what comes out. Having the tables can be really helpful for giving a direction, particularly for a particular game. But if I'm just making something interesting, I will often simply just take bits out of my boxes and bash them together to see what comes. So for example, I found these legs, which are a Mantic Zombies legs. I'm probably going to take the torso of a Frostgrave Mini, for example, and make something a bit weird using that. Keeping random and weird pieces can be really awesome for kit bashing. So for example, my daughter had a dinosaur skeleton kit that she lost some parts of and wanted to get rid of. So I've taken those pieces and I'm going to use them in a future kit bash. So, and that's just to show really kind of when you are kit bashing, to make sure that you keep all your bits, never throw a bit away. So all of these sprues, you know, keep your old sprues, because you never know when a piece that's on a sprue could come in handy. I never throw a piece away, keeping every little piece for future projects really. That's how I kit bash, that's how I approach it. I have fun with it, I enjoy myself. I don't really worry too much about the end result, just see where the kind of inspiration takes me. Thank you all for watching. I hope that has been interesting and useful. I'm not sure if I will do many more videos like this. If there's a desire for them, I'll do a painting video or something like that if people would like to see that. There's a lot of people doing this kind of stuff on YouTube already to a much better standard than I am. I'm running this off of an app on my phone and a GoPro camera. That's all for now. Take care everyone and see you again soon.